For 31 weeks since the pandemic began, nonprofits in the city have gathered each Friday morning for a call to come together around solutions for the challenges on the ground in the communities they serve. At the core of that is Casey Phillips. Casey is the executive director of the Walls Project, and he's joined by a panel of all-stars who got busy making sure schools were supported and our kids were equipped to learn when the pandemic hit. We are honored to welcome 100 Black men to the discussion this morning for a panel on educating Black men. The work of the 100 is well known throughout the community and includes a focus on mentoring. The panel will be facilitated this morning by the organization's executive director, Trey Godfrey.
Well, good morning to all of you, and thank you all for joining us at this very important symposium. I had the opportunity to participate last year and have great joy in the opportunity to do so again this year. And so before we get started with our panel, let me first thank our friends at New Schools for Baton Rouge, my good friends Chris Meyer and Adonica Duggan, and of course I have to mention my second mother, Ms. Gwen Hamilton, and their entire crew for creating this amazing forum for us to come together to share ideas, to further our understanding, and to strengthen our advocacy for the students of our community. As was mentioned, my name is Trey Godfrey, and it's my honor and my pleasure to serve as Executive Director of 100 Black Men of Metro Baton Rouge, a 27-year-old organization that seeks to improve our community by positively impacting the lives of young people, particularly young Black males. I am tremendously excited about our panel this morning and our panelists. So as we get started, let me first invite all of you to use that chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We've all been on a bunch of these in the last 6 months, so you all know how to do it. But as these gentlemen speak, please do question, comment in that box, and we'll be sure to make some time to come back to it before the end of our panel. And as we get started, first off, let me introduce our panelists. First, Mr. Kenneth Campbell, who is Executive Director of Southern Louisiana of IDEA Public Schools. Prior to that, he spent time with the Black Alliance for Educational Options and has been in this space for a very long time. So, Mr. Campbell, thanks so much for being with us this morning. Our next panelist, certainly probably among the audience on this Zoom right now, probably needs no introduction. But Mr. Dana Peterson is the former Assistant State Superintendent and has been in the education space nearly his entire career. Spent time also as Deputy Superintendent of External Affairs for RSD. Mr. Dana Peterson, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And finally, Mr. Tyrone Dunn, who is the Chief Administrator of Peak Behavioral Health Services. Peak is a company that provides behavioral and mental health services for adults and adolescents and spends a decent amount of time in their practice with young school-age children. Mr. Dunn, thank you for being with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So as we get started with this panel, talking about issues dealing with educating young Black men, young Black males. Dana, let's go and start with you because we're in a unique time and space. Not only do we have the existing challenges, but now we're trying to do this during a pandemic. And so since the onset, at least here in the state of Louisiana in March, all of those challenges have been exacerbated. So in your view, what have you seen and what have we learned when it comes to educating young Black males during this time and space?
Right. Well, first of all, thanks again for having me, and I'm glad to be a part of this. And kudos to our friends at New Schools for Baton Rouge for hosting. You know, I also would take the opportunity to just give a tremendous amount of kudos to all of the frontline teachers, school administrators, system administrators throughout our state, but particularly there in Baton Rouge, who have really done faced a really hard task and job during this time since, March 13th, when the governor issued the initial stay-at-home orders. And, schools really, immediately put plans in place to get kids equipped with technology and try and face a new, a very new world. Now we're, 6, 7, 8 months later, and I think we're, many of us, given that hard work that schools and teachers and everybody's doing on the front line, we're fearful about what type of learning loss kids are going to have, and that impact of that loss on their future learning and future opportunities. And of course, that gets exacerbated when we're dealing with students who may have already been behind or may have already been suffering from what Mr. King talked about a little while ago, limited opportunities, limited resources, sometimes limited will. So I think we've got a lot in front of us. I know schools and parents also. We all want kids to be back in the classroom, back to a normal environment. It's not what we have right now, of course. I think some of the lessons learned in my conversations with teachers and schools, first of all, technology is really, really, really important. And I think, schools and systems have done a lot to try and bridge that gap for kids. And I think there's going to be long-term benefit for that work and for that effort. So when we get back to a time when things are more normal, hopefully that use of technology and being able to learn from home will continue, and we can work to extend the learning day and learning time that many of our students have. I think we also see the importance of supports for kids and supports for the adults who are responsible for their learning, supports for families to ensure good learning environments inside of home that are conducive to kids getting the education that they deserve. So I think there's just a few of the lessons learned, and I think if we talk to frontline educators, there's a lot more that they can educate us on about this time.
Absolutely, thank you. One of the things, and I was going to save this for later, but since you mentioned learning loss, let's turn to that. And Ken Campbell, go ahead and pull you into the conversation on this. We all understand the learning loss that happens during breaks, between school sessions, right? But this has created something that I don't think that we've seen before when it comes to the level of learning loss and the level of necessary remediation. What have you all seen within the Idea Schools network, and how are teachers and administrators best able to deal with that?
Yeah, thank you, Trey. First of all, as always, thanks the New Schools for Baton Rouge team for putting this together. Great to see, a group of Black men, helping to lead on education and talking about these issues that are so critical to our community. So, really appreciate the opportunity and happy to engage on this. I think the first thing, Trey, is that the learning loss is very real, and I think it's being it is being further extended by inconsistent levels of engagement, right? That I think kids have, right? So I think that's a big part of this that a lot of people may not be paying as much attention to as they need to. We have had, fortunately, and I think first, Trey, I think there was a lot of, I don't think it's all gloom and doom, right? So there are a lot of gloom and doom predictions that were made about our kids and families. But the reality was when it came to time to, get technology, parents and kids were super excited. When it came first day to log in, parents were super excited, right? And they were there. And so I think there's a lot to be said for that first. The second one, I think, is that you have to have a system that provides the necessary supports, in particular around engagement. And there's a technology component that's a part of that. But I think there's also, kind of supporting families component of that has to be a part of it also, that I think sometimes we're missing. And so while we've had, well over 90% attendance on a daily basis by our kids, the amount of time that they're participating and engaging in some cases is lower than it really needs to be in order for them to close the natural gaps, let alone, the gaps that have been created by this pandemic. So I do think, it's very important that we focus in particular on engagement, because the more kids that we can get engaged and the longer we can get them engaged, the better. And I don't know that any of us have figured out how to overcome that particular challenge as it relates to educating kids during this. And the only other thing I think that's important for Black students, males, all students, is that we take, now that we're back in person, first of all, 76% of our parents have chosen in-person instruction. So we're really excited about that. We know that that helps us with engagement, but I also think the health and safety component of this is one that I don't know if anybody's going to talk about because we're so focused on instruction, but I think that health and safety component is a precursor to being able to do anything well in person right now. And so we have to take that very seriously also.
Got it. So you mentioned engagement, and what from the family piece that you just mentioned, what stands out? What are the best practices as you all define them, and what are some of those things that you can share that works?
Yeah, so I think the first one is that somebody really owning at the school level, right? Someone has responsibility and accountability for student engagement. So for us, that becomes a grade team, right? It's very important that they know the data and that it's not okay, the same way it's not okay for a kid to check out when they're with you in person. If you walk into a classroom and you see a student with their head down on the desk, right, there's an adult who have a responsibility to say, it's not okay, I'm not giving you permission to check out. I think we have to find, ways to extend that to the home, right? Which certainly creates barriers of time, space, technology, but somebody has to own it. And somebody has to, who makes the call to the family to say, Trey, we need you to sign in today, or Trey, we saw you this morning, but we don't see you this afternoon. How can, what do we have to do to get Trey engaged? And in some cases, we talk to families about them participating in person, right? We have gone specifically to some parents to be able to say, for example, if Dana's, very inconsistent, to say, we'd love for Dana to come in person, right? This is what in person looks like. We have desk shields on all our desks. We're going to take health and safety very seriously, but we see that Dana is struggling, to engage every afternoon. So I think it's a student by student approach, Trey, and I think somebody has to own that responsibility. Somebody has to feel like, there's a problem if these kids don't engage, and I have to do everything I can to help to be able to do that.
Got it. Thank you for that. Tyrone, let's go and pull you into this discussion right now. One thing, and really appreciate John King and the insights that he shared with us this morning. And one thing that he mentioned was the importance of community organizations, particularly as it deals with our students and developing them as people and developing their connection to education. How do you see that in the young men that you deal with in the mental and behavioral health space?
Well, first, Trey, thanks for allowing me the opportunity to be a part of this forum today and the idea. Um, to answer your question, I think in the mental and what we do at Peak Behavioral Health, what we're finding is that resources are the number one thing that are missing in the community for as helping kids. So what we try to do, we try to match kids with resources that they'll need to get them to the next level. We deal with a lot of mental issues in what we do, and we realize that mental issues are something that's there, and what you have to do, what we try to do is give them a healthy recovery by matching them with resources and people. We talk about mentoring. We find that when you mentor a young person, it helps them bridge that gap in the educational aspect as well, because most of the young people that we deal with, the homes don't have fathers in them. And when we place a male with them, it helps engage them and help put them back on the right track. I think that in the school systems, they're doing a great job, but I think they also need more resources to help these kids out that are having the mental issues, or that are just having issues of not having the right resources to learn. We do tutoring. We offer free tutoring at the agency because once they get out of the school environment, when they come home, in some instances, there is no lights in the home. There's no internet in the home. So we try to provide them with these type of resources to help them bridge that educational gap.
Got it. Thank you. Dana and Ken, back to you all as very high level education administrators. Another issue that came up when John King was speaking earlier, and this one was a question that when I sat on a panel at this event last year, I actually spent a little bit of time addressing, and that is the notion that there are not Black men in schools. Now, I had a bit of a disagreement with someone who said that, because the point is Black men are in schools. Unfortunately, we are only there because we're in the kitchen, or we are the janitorial staff, or we're the disciplinarians, or we're the ball coaches. But where we are noticeably and conspicuously absent is actually as the educators. How do you all see that, and what can be done to get more Black men in the classroom? That's number one. Number two, what difference does it make for a Black child to have Black men in the classroom?
Well, I'll try first. I think to answer that second question first, it makes a tremendous amount of difference, and I think each of us in our own personal lives and stories can attest to positive Black role models in school settings really having a significant impact on our growth and our development. So I think it goes without saying it. It's vitally important for our kids to have that, particularly, and I say particularly our young boys, but I think all of our students, to see Black men as role models, as people to look up to, as people who are going to love, care, nurture, and hold them accountable, I think is really important. I think the way we get there, in our schools, I think we have to, disrupt that idea that John talked about earlier of racial bias. I think there is a tendency inside of schools and school systems to relegate Black men to roles of coaching or dean of students, to be the disciplinarians in schools. So, we've got to kind of break that mold. I think, I've known Ken for a long time and have a tremendous amount of respect for him, and to see him as a CEO of a network of charter schools, he and Dewan Johnson and others in our community, I think are really important, leadership models. And I think the decisions that they're going to make are going to have an impact on, on seeing more African American men in schools and hopefully in the classroom. I think we have to work with our university systems around recruitment to ensure that we're encouraging young Black students to take a hard look at teaching. And I think we have to do more to ensure that not just male teachers, of course, but teachers across the board, that we, professionalize the profession, if you will. We value the profession. We pay teachers a good wage, a good income, so they don't have to leave the classroom in order to earn more money. I think all of those are important elements in ensuring that we have a good pipeline of young Black men who are interested in the profession.
Yeah, and I think, Trey, I am super excited about what is going on at our schools. First of all, we have Black male educators at every single level of our schools, and instructional roles, important instructional roles. We have, first and second grade teachers who are Black men. We have college prep teachers who are Black men. And then if you go to Idea Innovation, you will find a team of special educators that is all Black men who take care of our most severe, our severe and profound students. Just an amazing team of men who care deeply about our kids and understand the important role that they play in developing our kids into successful adults. So I agree though with Dana, right? And I think one, intentionality matters, right? And I think if you have an intention, right, to make that happen and a goal, right, you can move forward on those goals. And so, always that teacher quality is first. I don't believe that you can't also get teacher quality and Black men or Black educators in front of kids. And so, we are very deliberate about that at the organization. It's something that I believe in strongly, and, continuing to nurture and develop those individuals, I think is also important. And so it is, you're right. I mean, kids need to see, leadership from Black men around education. It's one of the most important things that we can do. And I actually want to use this opportunity to call for something that's been, rolling around in my mind for the longest of times. And I think I probably talked to Dana about this at some point, but I would love to see, just a Black male education leadership collaborative set up in the city of Baton Rouge, right? An opportunity for those of us who are inside of education, but also those of us who are community leaders to come together to have a voice, right, and impact on what goes on educationally in this parish. I think it's past time that we do that. And I really, think that that's an initiative that we should all, look to be a part of, because our educators need not just support; they need networking opportunities, and we need to have a stronger voice about what goes on in our community as far as education is concerned.
Quick follow-up question, Ken, that just came within the chat box. Those special instructors that you mentioned, one of our attendees is wondering if these teachers are special educators or if they're paraprofessionals.
They are special educators.
And what's, just so everybody can have a frame of reference, what's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so a special educator is the individual, the instructional leader for kids in that particular classroom. So they're responsible not just for care and support, but the overall educational attainment of those students. So they are the teacher of record. They are the folks who are, like I said, have the primary responsibility for those students. So and typically what happens with a paraprofessional is that they're there to support, right, in a variety of different capacities.
Very good, very good. Tyrone, back over to you to talk a little mental health. My friend Crystalline, who's attending, made a great comment to the last point you made when she said that there should certainly be ongoing learning opportunities for educators concerning mental health and emotional balance of self and of students. One of the issues that came up last year, Ms. Hamilton asked a question to the panel. What do we think is one thing that we're not talking about that's very important when it comes to young Black students? And my answer to that was trauma, because I think that a lot of our young students deal with traumas that are far beyond anything we had to deal with when we were growing up, and they deal with it at ages where they're too young and ill-equipped to sufficiently deal with that. In the mental and behavioral health practice, what do you all see when it comes to ACEs, to trauma among young Black males, and how can we begin to best address those with our school kids?
Well, you're absolutely right about that. I can tell you that since I've been in this field, I think I grew up well sheltered, because some of the things that the young people bring to me today is far beyond what I went through as a child. The young Black boys and Black girls are witnessing too many negative things in their life. They see people getting killed in front of them. They see these drug transactions going down, and people being killed around them. So what we try to do is, from a mental standpoint, try to take them out of that space. We try to bring them in and work with them on their self-confidence. We realize that if a student is doing well in school, their confidence will go up. So we try to work with them on all of their reading skills, writing skills, math skills, teaching them manners, teaching them to respect their elders. We find that with young Black boys, when we teach them math, it really takes them to a whole nother level when they can understand that they can compete with anybody that's in their classroom. So I think what we have to do as a community, and it's going to take a community to make this work, with the school systems, with the behavioral health companies, and all of the partners out there. We have to come together and come up with a plan to help these the young kids in our community with things that going to help them progress through life. You can't control the environment that you're in, but you can control what you do in that environment. We go into the home, we take kids out of the home and bring them to different elements. You know, Danny was talking about partnering with the universities. There's a large number of kids here in Baton Rouge who have never been to Southern University or LSU, for that fact. And these are two major universities in the city of Baton Rouge, but they've not had any exposure to it. So I think if the more we can expose kids to the positive things in life, it could give them a choice as to where they want to be in life.
Amen to that. Ken Campbell, I'm not sure if you're monitoring this chat box on your computer, but what just happened is the BMELC organization, the Black Male Education Leadership Collaborative just came together. We have about 4 or 5 new members. Sign me up as well. If you need a sponsoring organization, I'm going to sign up to 100.
Absolutely. No, I think that's the right thing to do. And you know, I think it's also important, you know, we just, you know, even though it's on an interim basis, right, we just, our school board just selected a Black man as superintendent of the district. And I think one of the first orders of business is, you know, kind of how do we help you know, Adam, right, in the new responsibilities he's had. And I think also, how do we push Adam, right, in some ways that are sometimes challenging, right? It's who has that conversation, and how do you set it up in such a way that we can move forward, you know, I think with the urgency that our kids deserve, and what some of the bold changes that our kids, you know, need and deserve. And so, you know, I'm excited about getting together with a group of people. And there have been people out there, right? The first thing I don't want to do is I don't want to leave the impression that nobody's out there leading on this, right? Because we have a lot of individuals who are out there, right? We have 2, you know, young, smart, talented members of our school board, right, who were elected recently, right, who are out there and helping to lead this fight. We have people like, you know, Pastor Jetson. We got Raymond Allman, right? We have a lot of people, you know, Dewan, Lamont Cole. We have a lot of people who are involved in this. But I do think that deliberate effort and organized effort, you know, might be the important thing that can hopefully come out of this sort of collaborative. And so I take you up on that offer, my brother, and I think it's an opportunity for us to do some great things.
Absolutely. And one of the things, sometimes even to our detriment at times, it's great to have a lot of people and a lot of entities involved. But when there's such kind of decentralization and everybody's kind of doing their own thing without knowing what everybody else is doing, I believe that we can tend to miss the impact that we could have made by finding a way to work together. And so I'm all in. I'm going to nominate you as the director of, let me see,
I'm in, bro.
ELC.
I'm in.
Okay,
He's got the plan already in his drawer, Trey. He's been on this for a minute, so I'm confident he's ready to roll.
He was just waiting for the right time to spring it on everyone.
That's right, exactly.
Got it. Look, a very important point just came up, and something that I'm sensitive to, right? So I run an organization who focuses on primarily young Black males. And we recognize, though, the importance of putting a lot of attention on our young Black females, because we don't want any population within our community to be forgotten about. And so Crystalline Lyles came back on and said, let's not forget about our young sisters as well. And so Dana, I'm going to kind of toss this over to you with a lot of conversation and a lot of focus, in my opinion, not quite enough, but on young Black boys, looking at the statistics and everything else. What then do we say about our young Black females within the system?
Well, it's a great reminder that, and I said this earlier, you know, I think some of the things we're talking about are great for boys, will be great for young Black boys, but will also be great for young Black girls. I think to your earlier question to Mr. Dunn, you know, I agree with you that trauma is something that's not talked about enough. There are traumatic stressors in the lives of young Black girls as well, not just in the lives of the boys. But one of the things that we're also not talking about that I think will benefit our community as a whole. And I realize it's very difficult. You know, the last several months, you know, we have seen and brought to the forefront the idea of, you know, racial disparities, the need to combat racial bias, the systemic barriers that our kids, boys and girls, obviously face. But I think something we sort of have lost track on a little bit is I think we need system disruption as well in order to get to better learning environments. And this is always the hard part, because I think there's a fear to really disrupt systems that don't well for Black kids, because in the short term, there's pain associated with that. You know, I think we sometimes really see when you, if there's a school that is, you know, systematically underperforming, you know, long term, we're talking over the 5, 6, 7, 8-year range, and the school is just not getting it right. I think we're sometimes reluctant to make that hard decision about replacing that school or investing in new schools or new strategies or new systems, because we know that once we make that decision, there's sort of pain on the other end of that decision. And you know, I think, you know, whether we're targeting, you know, young Black boys or targeting young Black girls, I think we need to make sure that we are investing in new ideas, new schools, new strategies, new plans. And like John King said, if that new strategy doesn't work, we're going to try another one, and we're going to keep trying until we get it right. And we owe that to all of our kids. And the only way to get there, you know, the old saying is, if you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. We have to be willing to make some. And I know this isn't, you know, widely popular, but I'm certainly the one willing to say it, because I think it's vitally important. System disruption, and I think we need more of that in Baton Rouge. And I think, you know, if you look at the Baton Rouge landscape, it is one of the most important. I've said this for the last 2 years to anybody who would listen to me. It's the most important local school system in the state, and it's also one of the most promising local public education landscapes in the entire state. Perhaps one of the top 5 or 10 in the country. And when you talk to people around the country, why is Baton Rouge on people's radar in other parts of the country, is because of the interesting things that are happening there. But you know, we have a long way to go before we can honestly say that we're providing and putting our best foot forward on behalf of young Black boys and young Black girls to give them the opportunities that they need, the skills that they need, the tools that they need to succeed. And so the entire larger community will benefit from it.
Love it. It reminds me, I have a whiteboard in my office, and one thing that I always keep myself reminded of, there's a note at the top right written in red marker that says "Stay disruptive," because while you all are working to disrupt models within education that tend to systemically hold our children back, we as an organization are also working to disrupt what's going on in our neighborhoods, cycles of poverty, cycles of violence. And so, yes, that level of disruption is so absolutely necessary. Look, I have a little bit of bad news, is that we only have a couple minutes left. But what I'm going to do is this, is kind of give each one of you a parting shot. But before I do so, I want to honor a couple of things that just came into the chat box. If you choose to mention it in your answer, good. But I just want to make sure that these points have been kind of tossed out there, because I think that they're important. One of our attendees asked, Dana and Ken, you all have worked at the state level. How do you disrupt at that level, or do you just build your own table? Now, you know, of course, today we've already started our own organization. Nashana Bilbrew said that in the hospital, they have positions called navigators, right? and they operate in a specific area. And so with teachers having to teach both in person and virtually, they don't have a lot of time for the communication relay that happens working with parents and everything else. Is there a role you see for kind of an engagement navigator who can do some of that legwork before small issues become large ones? I just wanted to mention a couple of those, but final parting shots, and I'm going to ask everybody as best you can to keep it between about 45 seconds and a minute. Tyrone Dunn, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Ray, and thanks for the forum. I just wanted to encourage everybody to understand that mental illness is a major thing going on in our community today, and we're working very well with the schools. I think we still need to do it. There's a lot more that we can do in the school system to help the schools with this area, with the young students. Most of the kids that we deal with are in the school system, and they're struggling in the school system because they don't have all the resources that they need to make it through. So I just want to encourage the school systems to continue to doing the great work that they're doing. And anything that the mental health community can do to help and assist with that, we're here for the school systems. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Mr. Dunn. Kenneth Campbell, over to you, and I'm going to throw one little wrinkle in before you give your parting thoughts. Is kind of give your takeaway in the context of the pandemic, and how does the coronavirus pandemic color this conversation?
Yeah. So I think I always like to look at challenges as actually opportunities. And I do think that this pandemic has created new opportunities for us in terms of the way that we do our work, as well as, kind of what we expect from ourselves and what we expect from our kids and our families. We talked about the navigators. And for us, everybody who's a part of our team is involved with helping to make sure that our kids are engaged. So who makes phone calls to parents and helps us? Bus drivers help to make those calls, right? When the buses stop, they have a list of kids and they call these kids to be able to say, hey, is Trey going to get on today? Is Dana going to be online today? What do we have to do to be able to help you? So I think it takes an all-in approach. And the biggest thing is, what are our expectations for ourselves, right? Do we expect our kids to reach excellence? And if so, what are we willing to do to make that happen? And how do we not allow barriers, whether it's inertia, whether it's, routine, whether it's, the fear of short-term pain? Like, how do we overcome those things so that we do the right things we need to do for our kids in an urgent way?
All right, thank you very much. Dana Peterson, last word.
Yeah, again, thank you guys for having this. I'd want to, once more give a shout out to all of the frontline workers in our schools who've done, yeoman's work in making sure kids have access to technology and internet, make sure they have meals, and make sure they've put their best foot forward on distance learning. To answer the question of, can the state be disruptive? It has been and can continue to be. And I think we can also build our own tables. And I think, NSBR is an example of building your own table to try and disrupt.
Amen to that. I just got a comment that I want to share from a brilliant attendee named Nikki Godfrey, the better looking of the two Godfrey children. She says most disruption and innovation comes after times of stress. In other words, there was something that you needed to address, and you became very innovative in disrupting whatever model that had existed. And so that kind of points to the notion that this is a perfect time and space now, and that what we've gone through because of this pandemic ought not be wasted, but instead used as an opportunity and an impetus to push us somewhere that we've never been before. This has been absolutely amazing. If you haven't already, look at that chat box. Laura and Adonica, I really hope that we save all of the comments in that chat box, because there's a whole lot of wisdom that you all are dropping in there. Again, gentlemen, thank you all so much for being panelists this morning. Chris Meyer, Adonica Duggan, thank you all so much for putting this together and for giving us this opportunity to share. Dana Peterson, Kenneth Campbell, Tyrone Dunn. My name is Trey Godfrey from 100 Black Men of Metro Baton Rouge. Thank all of you very much.
Thank you.